When we get lost, we are forced to be flexible. And when we lean into lost, we can find fun and we can find freedom. When we lean into lost, it actually becomes an exploration. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to another episode. As usual, I'm so grateful to be here with you for another episode of Behind Beliefs, Behaviors in the Brain. And today you may have seen the title of today's episode, Lessons from Japan. And this is going to be a multiple part series because I have lots of lessons. Now, as you might have guessed, I had the opportunity to travel very recently with my son to Japan during our fall break and for his birthday. And this was somewhat of a bucket list trip for us. And so we did end up visiting multiple cities. We packed a lot into this trip, but it was an amazing trip. Now, going from city to city, and if you're wondering where we went, we started in Tokyo. Of course, we flew into Tokyo, and then we went to Kyoto, after which we went to a city called Kinosaki, which is a city of hot springs and onsens, which was amazing. And then we came back to Kyoto, had some experiences, traveled to Osaka, and then back to Tokyo. So it was a full trip for 9 days. Maybe one might say too full. I think if I were to do it again, I would probably either stay a little bit longer, that would be ideal, or maybe take a couple of things out. But it was a wonderful trip. It was an amazing trip. And as you might guess, traveling between cities and within the city, there were plenty of opportunities to experience getting lost. And that we did. We experienced getting a little lost. We experienced detours. And, one of the things that I came away with as I reflected was the lessons that came about in getting lost. Oftentimes, we're conditioned that our path from point A to point B is supposed to be linear and direct. We are conditioned that if we are getting lost on that path, that is a bad thing. And I'm here to tell you that lost can actually be the lesson. It can be the essence of the lesson. Getting lost can actually show you the way. And so during this trip, several times, but one time in particular, on our way from Kyoto to Kinosaki, so this was on the second leg of travel of our trip, we had a detour. Now, I will tell you that my experience of Kyoto, so we visited Kyoto kind of twice. It was sandwiched around our Kinosaki experience. And so the first day we were in Kyoto, my experience was rather it felt rather harsh. It was very Kyoto is a city. And what I was expecting, and we'll talk about expectations in a whole nother episode. I say expectations are a setup. They are a setup. My expectations of what I would experience particularly interacting with people were a little bit different from what the actuality was. Now, it wasn't horrible by any means, but it just wasn't what I expected. And so from the beginning, I was a little worried like, oh, this is what I expected to experience in my interaction with the culture way off from what it's going to end up being. So let's put a pin in that. We're coming from Kyoto and we're on the train to Kinosaki and we're supposed to be taking this express train. And first of all, we actually missed our original train. And that's a whole, getting to know the train system and understanding and getting help from people to actually get to where we wanted to go to get on the right train. That was one thing. But then as we got on the train that was supposed to be the express train, it ended up stopping at a station and we had to get off and transfer to a local train, which was something that when I booked the JR line initially wasn't supposed to happen. I surmise that because we missed our original train, that's why that happened. But as we got off of the train, there was a lot of anxiety around, okay, where are we? And Is we hop the next train? Is that the actual train we're supposed to be on? While I learned a little bit of Japanese, I didn't speak the language well enough to be able to have a whole conversation about how to create our detour to this city that we were going to. However, Google Translate is a wonderful thing. And so as we boarded this second train, which we found out was a local train, tried to pull up some maps, tried to figure it out. I was sitting in a seat with three other locals. And so I mustered up the courage to ask, to kind of explain my situation through Google Translate, and to ask, what's the best train for us to get off of to then board, get back on the express train to Kinosaki. And these three individuals, two men and one woman who was sitting directly across from me, they were they were so invested in helping us, right? So we were having conversations about where we're going, and one of the guys who was directly communicating with me was sharing, well, you could do this, or I could help you, I can explain to the conductor. And in that experience, what I realized that I had already in Kyoto, I had already left with a bias, that I had experienced this aspect of this culture that was off from what I had seen, had been told, had expected. And perhaps the experience I thought I was going to have was wrong. And then I got on this train, this local train, continued to interact and ask questions and communicate and endeavor to communicate, even use a little bit of my own Japanese that I learned, and met people who were just over, they were overjoyed to help us. So we figured out that the station that we were to get off at, which was a station just after our compadres got off, and as they departed that to their destination, they all three were like, "Oh, have a good trip. We hope you make it safely." And then one of the guys left us with a bag of snacks that I could give my son. And so for me, right there at the beginning, that was day 2 of our trip. Right at the beginning, that was a lesson in how we thought we were anxious about having gotten lost, when in actuality, the universe put lost in our trip so that I could expand my view, so that I could expand, so I could catch my own bias and I could expand my view. Lost was put in the trip to expose my own bias, to expose my own capacity for jumping to conclusions out of one experience, and to reaffirm that the culture and the experience that I was looking for was absolutely possible. And I was responsible for cultivating that. And so, as we are conditioned that lost can be a bad thing, lost actually breeds discovery. Getting lost breaks us of our rigidity. And when we get lost, we are forced to be flexible. And when we lean in to getting lost, we can actually find fun and freedom. So we are conditioned that loss is bad when loss is actually discovery. Now that wasn't the only time that that we got lost. I'll share another story. One of the things that we discovered that we loved in Japan, particularly me and my son, was their cream puffs. And I particularly had not had cream puffs before, but I experienced them in Kyoto and I was like, oh my gosh, we must have more of these. And so when we got to Osaka, this was, think, in day 5 of our trip, I had promised Delson, my son, that I would go to get some cream puffs. And so as I walked from the hotel into the city, I certainly got lost on the way to get in these cream puffs. And in that loss, I got to see a street performer. And in that getting lost, I came across street performers. And so I was able to stand on the corner for a little bit and enjoy some live music of street performers. But that all happened in getting lost on the way to get these cream puffs. Now, I did eventually get those cream puffs and get back, and me and my son enjoyed those cream puffs. Speaking of cream puffs, I'm telling you, we really love the cream puffs. The following day in Tokyo was my son's birthday. And while we did not get the cream puffs that day, the day afterwards, I went back into the city after we had completed our excursion day once again for the cream puffs. And this was another day that if you've ever been to New York, or if you've ever experienced a major metro transit system, and you live in a city that doesn't have one, trying to figure out that major metro system can actually feel like a lot. And so Tokyo has an amazing metro system that is pretty easy to figure out, but still is easy to get lost around. And so as I ventured out into Tokyo by myself, because we had had a whole day and I wanted my son to get some rest, and so I said, well, you stay at the hotel with Auntie. My good friend Nashanda was there, and she was resting. And so I said, you stay at the hotel with Auntie. I'm going to go back in the city and get these cream puffs. And so as I went back into the city and ventured into the abyss of the transit system, while I eventually arrived to where I needed to go to get these cream puffs, the amount of detours that I had to take, the amount of times that I got off of the train and wondered if I had gotten off at the right station, and was able to pull up Google Maps and say, okay, this was the right station, and then had to pull up Google Maps for the cream puff factory that I wanted to go to. And there were multiples of these cream puff factories. So I was like, am I at the right station for this cream puff factory, or is it this cream puff factory? And then you might be wondering, you might be thinking by now, they must really love some cream puffs for you to be going through all of this. And the cream puffs are not the point, but they are the star of the story today. I noticed myself going into this space of exploration, in the space of wonder. Initially, there was some anxiety around, where am I? Where am I going? But what I realized is it was an opportunity for me to really see the city and explore the city. So once I did finally get off at the right train station, at the right exit, and I exit, I'm walking through the city and I'm looking around, and the city is beautiful. And I just took my time. I let go of the rigidity of I have to get to this place by this time and get back to this place by this time. I knew that they were safe. I had time before dinner. And so I just walked around and experienced the city, the neighborhood that I was in for a while I also was endeavoring to find this cream puff place. So again, when we get lost, it sort of breaks us out of our normal space of rigidity. If you are a person who likes structure like I am, when we get lost, we are forced to be flexible. And when we lean into lost, we can find fun and we can find freedom. When we lean into lost, it actually becomes an exploration. So now, what does this have to do with everyday life? What does cream puffs have to do, and getting lost have to do with the work that I do? We're all in relationship and we're always communicating. And sometimes communication is an exploration that we can get lost in. We can get lost in our heads about it. We can get lost trying to figure out what to say next. We can get lost in the listening. And if we let go of it having to be perfect, if we let go of it having to be a particular way, then we make room for the discovery of what communication can be. If we let go of our own rigid views and expand and be flexible in our listening, and listening from all different perspectives, then we make way for the discovery of generative conversations, of depth of relationship and connection, just like I did on that train to Kinasaki when I let go of my fear and my expectation of how the asking could go. Then what I discovered was the kindness and the generosity of the human spirit, of someone who was waiting to help and was invested in our success of getting to our location. And oftentimes there is that happening in our communications, both at work, and at home, in our personal relationships, in our communities. Yes, there are people who resist communication. Yes, there are people who resist listening and resist expanding perspective. But we can control how we deal with our lostness. We can even support people in their being lost by expanding our flexibility of listening and making it more of a discovery and an exploration. Just recognize that when you're in communication and it gets intense or it goes off track, it doesn't go in that linear fashion that we expect it to go, and we get lost in the interaction, that it is an opportunity for exploration and discovery. And it can actually end up being a good thing. It can actually end up being a good thing. And so this is one of the things that I was reflecting on um, from the trip, in the ways that getting lost can kind of show us the way sometimes. And that even happened in one of the inside of the relationship between me and my sister friend who went with me. I'll share that conversation in a different episode because there are some other lessons that came up for me and for her inside of that conversation. But I wanted to just bring you an opportunity to reflect on when you feel lost inside of an interaction or a communication, and we tend to get in our head a little bit. Remember, that's an opportunity for discovery, and it's an opportunity for exploration. All right. So that is your walking orders, is to explore this week. Explore the conversations that you're having, explore the areas that feel unstable, go deeper and discover what's there and how can you make that lemonade out of whatever fruit. And how can you turn your uncertainty into exploration and discovery? All right. Share this episode, as always, with your friend, with your colleague, with your family member, because I feel like when we start to approach our interactions and our communications in this way, then we give each other access to deepening our relationships and to understanding each other in ways that we may not have before. And we not only need that in our personal relationships, we need that in our work relationships, we need that in our communities. Heck, we need that in our nation right now. So I would love if you would share this episode with someone in your community, on your social media, in your areas of influence. And this is the work that I do with organizations. So if you are in an organization and you know that there's a need for exploring how to improve the communication within and between your teams, where as it pertains to relationship repair, as it pertains to building trust and psychological safety, please reach out to me. You can do that by going to my website, mindremappingacademy.com. Or you can reach out to me directly on whatever platform you might be listening on social media, LinkedIn /Dr. Maisha. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, on all of those. And you'll find a lot of that information in the show notes. All right. So once again, I thank you for listening, because without my listeners, there is no podcast. And I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. But until then, stay empowered.